So, welcome everyone. My name's Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops, and so happy to be here tonight. Thanks to Wrightstown Library and Karen and Rebecca. And all of you for showing up. So, we're going to be recreating an owl, I call it the full moon owl drawing. We're using a 8.5 by or half sheet of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. We're also using two colored pencils, blue and black. In Crayola, it's just blue. It looks dark. So if you're using Prismacolor, you want to use an equivalent, almost like a navy blue or something like that. You can also get a ruler and also some sort of circle template. We realize the circle is probably about 3.5 inches in diameter around. So we're going to get started. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing with our regular pencil. I forgot to mention a regular pencil is needed as well. And we're going to be drawing lightly. And then basically going over everything in the blue and black. So I'm going to go a little closer now and move this over to the side. So this is basically sort of our outline of what we should be drawing with as far as our shapes. I'm just double checking, making sure that we are still good with nobody else coming in. So again, this is half sheet of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I basically folded it and kind of ripped it in half. The original is a little bit smaller, but for our purposes, we're gonna do this one. Just letting Fiona in. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is basically create our tree. So we're going to go to the side here and I'm just going to adjust the lighting because I feel like this needs a little more light. There we go. And going to the right side of our paper, we're going to create the side of the tree here. So let me just adjust my camera one more time. There we go. So we're over here on the right, and basically we're going to create the side of the trunk coming in. So I'm going to be creating this darker so you can see it. So basically the side of our trunk starts up at the top, but it's more of not a straight line. And we're just going to go all the way down, and then we'll create the smaller tree section coming out from that. But for now, it's right along the edge of our right side of the paper. And we're just going to go down just like this. You can see that I've got some bumps happening in the tree trunk, but we don't have to worry too much right now about exactly what it looks like because we'll go back and make it more exact. But that's basically, so here's the edge of my paper. And I forgot to say hello, Fiona. I saw that you popped on. We're recording, so everyone will receive this recording if you want to do it over. So once we have that drawn, we're then going to go down to the bottom of our page and we're going to move up a little bit so that we can create the trunk across the way, or I should say, not really the trunk, the branch. So if we come up from the bottom, we're going to move up a bit and I'm going to make the top part of it. And for now, just going to go across like this. And our tree branch goes up a little bit on the left side. And then we come back over to the right. And I'm going to give you more time on this. I'm just kind of showing it to you as I'm doing it. So that is the tree branch coming out. from the side of your tree. And we're going to get a little more in detail now with the rest of the tree. And we're going to start around this section. So I'm just going to let everybody catch up while I just double check, make sure no one's coming in. Yeah, we're good. So good to see a lot of you. And like I said, I see some new names. Also, just to let you know, for those Philly fans, Karen has the game on silently next to her, and if you're afraid of missing it, she is going to report in the chat if some good things are happening. So, okay. So back here, we're going to come back down now toward this section of the tree because we need to make some details. And I'm just going to kind of show this up close. So I've translated this picture into simple forms in the sense of just black and white using our pencil and line work. And then what we'll do after creating all this line work, what we usually do is we then start to go back and create and make it look more like shading and different values, meaning lights and darks of when we're doing our colored pencil. So anyway, getting back here, we're going to create this whole area and start to go up and down the tree. So we come up to this knob area. It's kind of knobby, right? So we made this line, but we can now erase that so that we can make it look a little more knobby like it is. And we're going to come up above and we're going to kind of create a three-dimensional, sorry, somebody just entered. We're going to kind of create a three-dimensional shape right here. And as you can see, it's going to go over the lines. I'm going to go a little bit closer now so you can see that. And welcome, Jean. We've just gotten started and we're recording. It's nice to have you. And we're using a half sheet of an 8.5 by 11 piece of computer paper. So now we're going to create, we have sort of a hill shape here, and then you can erase the line of the tree trunk so that now you just have that hill shape. And now we're going to go kind of above and make a curve. And basically what we're doing is we're making an opening for this tree section. So the knob is kind of going like this, and then down here, we're going to make it three-dimensional again. It's a bit of a bump. And after that, we start to add in our line work. And anything that you need to erase right now, you can go and do that. But now you have a three-dimensional opening off of your tree. And so we're going to continue with this line now, and we're going to make it kind of curve downward like that. And I'm going to move this over just a bit so that we can focus now in this area. So we're going to start to follow the line work around this shape at this point. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to start to go up the tree with more of our line work. But for right now, we're going to focus on here. So coming right over here, we're going to make another shape. And again, this is kind of, basically, these are all going to be lines in the tree. Some of them are a little bit more bumpy. So we're just going to be following lines coming right off of this knob and kind of right over here where the start of it is. So this one is going to extend out a bit and then go back to over here. We've got let's see, one more shape where we do that. We start to extend outward towards the right side of our paper, back again. And then we have a final line that's kind of going a bit across here, like so. But it's, if you notice, this line is not straight, it's kind of curved inward. And then again, I'm just going to show this really close. On the left side here, those lines stick out a bit so that it looks like it's a little, it's almost like attached on top of the tree, even though it's part of the tree. But we want to get that three-dimensional quality feel. And then you can kind of just erase the line that was there from before. And now you've got a bit of a bumpy part right there. And we're still going to focus now on this section just one more time, because we're now going to make another three-dimensional, oh, kind of a curved line right here, like so. And then we're going to make the smaller branch that's coming off of here. So we're going to go in a bit. We're going to start here and go across to the bottom. Now this section, the underside, is a little bit thicker, and there is a tiny branch that is kind of hanging off of it, like so. And we will come back over here and add more of the really thinner branches, but for now, we've got that section down. I'm going to lift up my camera just a little bit so that you can now see a little more of the top of the tree over here. The reason is because we're now going to start to concentrate on the line work in the tree, going upwards. But we're going to come back down sort of towards the middle of our page. So right where my pencil is. So where this is bending, where our line bends, we're going to make a line from here, and it's going to go curving to the right, bending to the right, going up our page, and then bending one more time to the left as it goes toward the top. So this is what we're looking at. That's the line we're looking at. And now we're going to create some other lines to the left of this. But we're going to start back down here in sort of that V shape. We're going to come back down and we're going to mimic that line. And then we've got one more happening, but that's going to start over here. Oops. Ignore that line for a second because I I went a little bit over to the left when I should not have. So this line is going to start here. I'm going to stay close to this line, like so. So here's what you should have. It almost kind of looks like a separation. And then we're just going to create some line work in this whole section. So again, we're going to start over here and start to move up just a bit. And we're going to create a line like so. And it's going to hug next to this part of the tree. So here's the line. It started up here, right? It's not connected, and went down here. And then we're going to come down over here and just create a curved line down here that's a little bit thicker and does not meet up with that line. So I'm just going to give you a little bit for you to focus on that. So I'll say that again. Basically, I came up here, started the line in the middle, went down to here, skipped over this part, and made a curved line over here that does not connect with that other line. These are just lines in our tree here. And then we've got two more lines that are curving down here. If you can fit those in, we've got 1, 2, 3. And we do have one more coming in over here, and that's going to branch out a bit toward the edge of our tree line. So it's going to be a little bumpy here now because we've now extended that line. And then we're just going to finish up here and just add a few more lines. Actually, one more right where we added this one, this kind of disappearing line. And it's going to go in really close to this line. And that's all we're going to do for now on that tree section. And then we'll be going back and using lots of shading in order to achieve the depth in that tree. But now we're going to go back to this area here. And we're just going to add some of the smaller branches here. So we're going to start right over here to the left. And for now, we're going to use single lines. So we've got a small one here. And we'll double up that line. And then we're going to have one that connects. It's kind of behind it. And this one is actually stays a single line. So it's going to be curving and going out to the left. We're going to come back over here and just make another small curved line. So these are thin branches that we are recreating at this point. Right here, this is a thin branch. We're going to come back over here and we're going to make another thin branch coming from here. This one's going to curve and kind of bend a little bit like so. We have another curved one coming from here. And then a smaller one. And then we're going to have another branch coming from here, going off toward the corner, the bottom corner of our page, like this. So again, this came from here. And then we've got some smaller offshoots. Oops. One right here. So I'm just pointing my pencil what we're working on. We started off with this line and then this line. And then we're just going to do a little curved one right here. Just going to erase that so you can kind of see. Okay. And now we're going to start with our owl. Just going to give everybody some time to make sure you're doing okay with the rest of it. Okay. So now we're going to start in this section to create our owl shape. So well, I'm looking at my other one here. So probably about, I'm going to make a line right here. This is where the head of our owl will start. So if you kind of go down, it's less than half of your sheet of paper. So if you see my line, you know, half would probably be about right here maybe. So it's definitely less than half coming from the top. And so now we're going to create the owl shape. So we've got his head happening here. We're going to curve down. So this is the overall shape for now of our owl, right? This is like with his wings. And we're even going to come down to the bottom past underneath our twigs or our tree. And we're just going to create this shape for his tail for now. And there's a little bit of him showing in back of the tail, which is what that is. So I'm going to make this a little bit darker so you can see. So again, this is the overall shape of our owl for now. We're going to fuss a little more with it, but we just want to get that overall shape in. And I'm going to erase the line that I created for the top of his, where the top of his head would start. I'll give you some time. And we're going to start then with his heart-shaped face, which right up top, we've got his head here. We want to make it a little more pointy up here and a little more round on the sides. Nice. Karen just put an update in the chat. Love it. 3-0 Phillies. Thanks, Michael. This is awesome. I was saying earlier, if anyone didn't hear me before they got on, my husband is from Maryland originally, so he is a Commanders he's a Commanders fan. So I don't know that he's watching the game right now. It sounds like he's playing a video game with his nephews online. So I know, Michael. I got a half represent here. It's funny. Okay, so we're gonna get to the head here now. And like I talked about, we're gonna make this a little pointy up here because it's gonna be a little more round. I made it flat so we could kind of get it, but I'm gonna round out the top of his head by going on the sides and making those more circle-like, and then a little bit pointy up at the top. So it's gonna kind of look a bit like this as far as the top of his head. And then from that, you can then start to make the top of a heart shape from here. So that's going to look something like this. And you may have to make his face a little more circular and wider than how you drew it over here. So his face is wider rather than longer. So keeping that in mind. So right now, I'm just trying to recreate that shape. So I have to go a little bit beyond the shape of his whole, of his body that we created, which is good because it's how it looks. This part is wider. And then this back of his head or top of his head sticks out in the back. Whereas his face, the heart shape, would be a little wider than the back of his head. So once you have that, You can then go inside down the middle, and you're going to create a line that doesn't exactly reach the bottom of his little face, but it's where we're going to be putting the nose. So if the bottom of his face is here, and I'm going to make sure that this line doesn't reach the exact bottom. And then we're going to create the nose shape, which is kind of this shape. And the middle part, it's got kind of like a cut in it. So I'm just going to show this up close just so you can see. So we're looking at that kind of shape. So that's his nose. And then we've got some lines coming from his nose. So we've got one here and one here. And they kind of go up. And then those break into his eyes, which are big and round, very circular. So there's one. Here's the other one. Kind of looks like he's got glasses on right now. And again, go lightly because you'll be, retracing that circle to make it more circular. And you're going to make 2 small round circles up in the top right corner of his eyes. So he should look a little something like this. Now he's going to have an outside circle around both of these in the blue. So you want to make sure to leave some room for that. And I'm just going to adjust his left eye a little bit here. There we go. And then we're going to deal with now the shape of his body and just make sure that we have the right shape happening. So we want to come inside to the left here, right underneath. Oh, sure. Yeah. So his nose. So up close is like that. Oops. And then we're going to go down. So inside his feathers here, we're going to have the shape of the back of him. And we create that by coming here on the left. And this is his belly area. So we're going to come right to the right side here. Make a shape like that. And then we're going to come over to the right. Do something similar. So again, this is sort of his belly feathers. And to recreate or make sure that you have the right shape for his body, I'm going to make this darker. It's a little bit pointed here. on the right side, and then it goes down, goes inward. And then the other side, kind of similar, and then it also goes downward toward the branch. Now, these should be very light lines on yours. These two shapes here, they should be very light lines. They are not for me for now, so that you are able to see them. Okay. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to create just a little bit of sort of a roundish upside down triangular shape. And then we're actually going to create the tail shape. We already did the basic shape. We kind of made it look like a big sort of blockish area. And then you're going to erase the bottom. And then I'm going to go really close now that we have a lot of it drawn, so that now we can focus on the details. So here we are right here at the tail. We've erased the bottom. If you want, you can lightly put in a line right there. And then we're going to go up from there and we're going to create another line like so. And then from that line, basically, that's the line of separation where the feathers start to look much more feathery from this line. So I'll show you what I mean. So basically, we have a line right here. And now we're going to create some curved lines slightly above this line. So for instance, here and here, here. And then some of those lines, as it gets to over here, is going to curve more to the right. So you're going to have a little something that looks like this. Erase this line in between here. And now what we're going to do to the bottom of where we just created those lines is make those lines look like this at the bottom. They're kind of going to be either flat or slightly shaped with a point like so. So I'm just going to show this up close. Just giving you some time. That's going to be our basic drawing for that section right now. And then when we go back with our doing some erasing, we're going to lighten that area up and get in there with our colored pencils. But so now we're going to go to the claw areas, which is happening right along this twig. And so basically, we're going to create the first claw over here. So we're going to go above, basically, we're going to go above the twig so that it looks like he is resting on top of the twig. So this is going to be like this. And for now, we're going to make shapes like this. There's one. You have another one with a space in between. So it's going to look a bit like this. My husband actually said it looked like the McDonald's sign a little bit, like that. So that's the first one, and we will lighten that up a bit so that it doesn't look so cartoonish. But then that brings us over to the one on the right side, and that one is angled a bit more and is a bit shorter. So by that, we have the first claw is going to look like this. The other one's going to continue from that like this. And our final one is bent and a little more pointy at the bottom, like so. And you can erase any lines that don't make sense anymore. I'm going to show this up close. And we're going to make this look a little more realistic when we get back to it, but these are the basic shapes of it. And now we're finally going to start on our moon. So we've got our basic owl happening here. And after we draw all of this stuff, we can then start to add all of the fun shading. But now we're going to go back and we're going to add our moon. So our moon starts to the left, about right here of where the owl's body is. And then we want to make sure that it kind of ends around the same way. So if you want to kind of draw a line across his body and then add another kind of circle there, or not a circle, kind of like a curve. And then from there, so again, you could also be tracing your circle at this point if you have a template. But if not, you can start to make your circle around. So your circle should usually feel a little more wider on the sides, so that your circle doesn't get too much up and down. As we're drawing a circle, it always feels like we're going out too wide. At least for me, it does. So want to try to remember to go out wider than you think on the sides. The other thing you can do is actually recreate a circle like this, like on top of your owl for now, so that it kind of goes all the way around. And you may have to kind of change where it ends up. Like I just kind of made that straight line across on the owl, but I kind of have to readjust so that the circle looks more circle-like. But it gives you kind of a good idea. And then erase whenever you're ready. And whenever you feel like your circle is pretty round. Let's see. I think mine has to be a little wider in this section. And now is when you want to thin out. Make sure that the circular part is thinned out enough so that you can tell where your line is, because we're going to be using this for when we're going to be drawing um, our lines next, coming from our moon shape. So just make sure that you know where you want to kind of end up with your circle. And this is where, if you want to use your ruler, you can use your ruler. So basically, we're going to be creating lines coming out. Well, it's all going to be behind. It's almost like the moon is radiating. And those lines are going to start from the moon shape. So I like to kind of start at the top, in the middle. And for now, we're going to be using our pencil. So everything after this, after we draw everything, we're going to lighten everything up and add our blue and our black. But these are our lines to create. So we want to start making some very straight lines, but they're going to start to like curve and bend as they go to the right of this line, and the same on this side, curving to the left, as if think of it as a sun almost. So, and our lines are very close together and very light. So you're going to start bending your lines. Let me see if you can see this on Zoom. Yep, you can. Okay. And just take your time so that your lines are as straight as possible. But again, if you want to use your ruler, you can. And everything is going behind the tree. So we're starting on the right. And again, you're going to start to slowly bend your lines so that it looks like they are emanating from the moon. And those lines are ending going towards the tree. Now, the other thing is, if you have to rotate your paper, that's what I did when I created this. I just kept rotating my paper. Make your lines very close together. The other thing is, remember those lines are going to also need to go underneath your branch and to the bottom. So when you get to the point where you start to see the sky underneath, you want to make sure to extend your lines so that it doesn't just end where it's coming from the moon. And this is where you really have to kind of take your time. And you can put it upright once in a while to make sure that you are kind of staying on course. Like when I get to a certain point, I do want to make sure that I'm still bending my lines now as I'm going around. And also, your lines will be going over the smaller twigs for now that we've created. We're also doing this before we created some of the other twigs because it gets confusing, and I actually added the twigs after. So remember, you're coming from the moon. So if your lines start to get a little wonky, go back to the moon and start to have your lines go from there. But keep going around. Now we'll be adding some more lines as we get into the blue pencil. So if your lines aren't completely next to each other real tight, that's okay. All right, and I'm almost getting back to center. I'm going to rotate again. What I like to do is go back up to the top where we started the half line there that kind of showed the half point, and just make sure that I'm staying centered with my lines and continuing to start to bend those lines to make it look as if those lines are emanating. Let's see, right here I crossed my lines a little bit, so I got to erase it and fix them a little more. There we go. Okay. And so you should have something that looks like this. And we have most of the drawing done at this point, except for going back and adding in our details. So I'm going to let everybody catch up at this point, because our next step is going to be lightening up these lines with our eraser and then going back in with our blue colored pencil. I'm just scrolling through to see everyone who's on. And I want to apologize for those of you that are out of state, from a different state, as we were talking about the Phillies. So again, when you are ready, you basically want to go back and lighten up your pencil lines. So you don't want to erase anything so that it's completely gone, but you want to go and lighten up the lines you just created, and especially the moon line, so that that line is very light, but you can still see where you can trace over. And then you're going to go onto your owl and you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to lighten up all of your lines with your eraser, because we're going to go back and we're going to start adding the blue. You're going to do the same to the tree. So basically everything that we have created thus far, you're just going to lighten up a little bit. As you can see, mine is getting lighter. And then your next step is going to be grabbing your blue pencil. And what we're going to do first is basically going over the lines that we just created. The lines coming from the moon. So basically, and you can go right next to those lines too. What's helpful is to start at the bottom with the moon. I don't mean the bottom of the moon. I should say right up against the moon where your lines should start so that you still create what looks like a like an imaginary line around the moon because we've erased the moon, the circle part. You can also go in right now and just redraw over the tree line with your blue pencil. That way, as you are recreating those lines coming from the moon, you don't go past too far because you can't see where the tree starts. I know for mine, I did it so light that I realized I didn't know where the tree was. Okay, so going back here. The other thing is, you don't have to follow each of those lines perfectly that you drew because we're going to be adding a lot more lines with shading with our blue pencil here. But you want to try and go in the right direction, in the same direction that you added or that you created. Which is why we just lighten up those lines, but still have them viewable. And again, remember to go around some of the twigs that we already drew. We haven't added the others, but we will. But we're going to get this background finished first. I know this part is very challenging. So just take your time. And again, it's okay if you're going over the smaller branches. We're going to be recreating those with our blue pencil as well. So I don't know if you can tell, but my lines now are starting to get blue. Amongst the pencil. Also doing this lightly at first. And then we're going to go around again. You can hear my pencil being picked up as I'm recreating each of the lines. And at this point, you're also going to be able to see if you have to make your pencil lines a little more closer to your moon or further away from the circular part of your moon, so that it still creates that circle. And then you can start to go right up against where you're creating those lines for your moon and make them a little darker. And again, going around again and creating those blue lines a little darker. Now that you have, or when you have the original light blue lines around, you can then start to darken up your lines as you go around a second or third time. And this is the process you're going to make for this background, is going back and making more lines, making them a little darker. You can even start to shade in those lines. So basically shading as if you're shading the sky, because it is. You still want those lines to show through, but you want them to be a little blended. So just taking your pencil, shading lightly in order to blend the background. Remember, we haven't done anything with the tree yet as far as shading or anything. So if you're shading and you go on top of the branches, it's okay at this point, because we're going to be making those darker. Right now, we're just concentrating on the sky, the night sky right now. The spooky full moon night sky. So now I'm just shading over the whole thing as far as the sky, and then going back towards the circular part against the moon and concentrating on shading around there, so that that shading creates the imaginary circular line that we need for that moon. So this is when you've, already started to shade a bit. You have your original lines coming out. And now you're going back and you're just evening out the shading in each of the sections, meaning at the bottom of your page, in between the twigs and his tail. And it takes a little time because you're shading. But you can keep turning your page around. And then we're going to get into the rest of it. But we want to make sure the background, is pretty done. So it might also look like some of your lines are being covered up. And if that's the case, you can then redraw on top some darker blue lines. So for instance, I've shaded and now I'm just gonna go a little bit darker now with my lines. One more time. Again, rotating the drawing around. Okay, so now you just want to make sure you can then go back around your moon and take your colored pencil and the opposite way, you can then start to draw the line around the moon by going into the blue section that we just created, but now creating the line by kind of doing a shaded line. If you're confused, you can kind of look up and see what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making a lightly shaded line at the start of the moon so that now it's more of moon-like circle. It's also where you can fix the circular part. I definitely always kind of go off kilter with it. And at this point, you may have to sharpen up your blue pencil so that we can now finish up the details of the tree and adding the small branches. And that first thing we want to do is grabbing your blue, and we're now going to start shading in the tree on the right side. And so this part is actually black. Oh, nice. Woohoo! 4-0 Phillies. We're gonna do it, I think. So we're gonna go darker blue along the edge here. So we're staying in the first line that we created, going down the tree with the blue. We're going to put black on top of it afterward, but we're going to color in the parts for right now that are really dark. So what I'm doing right now with you is using the blue for the darkest areas, and then we'll just go over those with black after we make the other portions of the tree lighter. So I'm now just taking the blue pencil And we've colored in the first part here on the top of the tree, but then I want you to take your blue and redraw over the lines, the pencil lines with your blue going dark. And then we're going to start to shade. So again, right now we're just tracing over all of those lines. Okay, sounds good, Shirley. Thank you. Can't wait to see it. Yeah, I know this one's a little bit longer than what we normally do. This is more like a painting as far as lengthwise because it's so detailed. So we're going to also outline this branch here again with our blue going across. So we had that originally in pencil. And also outlining the smaller ones coming from it here. And right now we're going to then create some of the smaller branches again. So for right now, though, we're just going to shade the entire right side of the tree. So we shaded dark on the first one, and we're going to go a little bit darker just to make sure that there's an actual line of dark blue. And then we're going to go light blue. Well, not light blue, but lightly shading for the rest of the tree for now. So since we have those lines that we used with the colored pencil and made them darker to separate, you now just want to kind of color in the rest of the tree for now with the blue. And then we'll go back and make certain sections a little darker. You're going to do the same with the branch that's coming from underneath, this twig that's coming from underneath. And the branch that the owl is actually sitting on or holding on to, you want to make sure to go in between his claws there and just lightly color blue. So everything's just kind of getting a blue shading to it right now. And then you're going to come back to the left side here. The top left corner, and we're going to create some two big branches on top of our background with our blue. So basically, it's going to kind of be shaped like this. This is a twig. And when you're finished with drawing that, you're going to shade that in with your blue. And you're going to make another one coming right behind it. that's curving and going up to the top. So here is, or here are the two lines, and then you're going to color those in too. Now, it doesn't matter right now if it's completely covering the background as far as your shading. We just kind of want to get those shapes in. And then we're going to add the smaller twigs, and those are going to be darker with our colored pencil. So again, this is all still with our blue. So we're going to come back here up top, and we're going to create a curved line here. So these are the twigs, little twigs that are coming, you know, in the background here. Some of them are a little bit lighter because there's so much in the background, like right here. We're going to make one more sort of larger twig coming from here and going a little bit into our moon. It's not large, it's not thick, but it starts to go towards the back part of our owl. And then there's another twig that starts to now branch off into lots of other twigs. Now, if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, that's okay. Like, say if your twigs are not in the exact place, that's okay. You want them in about the same area, but it doesn't have to be perfect. These are the smaller twigs, and we've got more happening up here that start to kind of bend and go and branch out behind, you know, in the sky there. And that's kind of what we're doing now. We're just filling in the thin twig-like areas. So, you know, if it doesn't look exactly, it's okay. And then we've got one more kind of larger one coming from this big area right here. So we're talking about this and kind of going towards our tree on the right side. And then we've got all of these little twigs with little offshoots branching off. And this is where you can just have fun and make it how you want it. You just want a bunch of small twigs branching off to fill in a lot of the sky in the background there. And we're going to add some little leaves by basically just grabbing the side of your colored pencil and shading kind of in a oval way for the leaves. So again, what I'm doing at this point is now kind of recreating some smaller shapes for leaves that are kind of hanging off of the smaller branches. And I'm just doing that by kind of using the side of my pencil and shading lightly, and then in some parts just a little bit darker, almost like I'm scribbling in an oval fashion, because I'm just recreating leaves that are kind of, you know, partial leaves that are hooked onto the branches still. And it's mostly on the left side. You can put some on the right if you want. I just didn't in my original. And then we want to add some more dark blue to our twig here that our owl is resting on. And basically the twig is darker at the bottom of the twig and kind of right underneath where he's grabbing onto. So you can now start to shade in with your blue pencil darker right underneath him, and then just along the bottom edge of where the tree trunk is. And then again, recreating, or I should say redoing some of the twigs coming off of that original branch, making them darker using your blue colored pencil and making those lines a bit darker by now going back and shading. And finally, what you're going to do with the tree is the parts that are darker are really first on the left side of each of the sections of the tree. So I'm coming over here and shading a little darker at the bottom. And then where we separated the lines as it goes upward, on the right-hand side, filling in with the dark blue. Kind of coloring that in. And then each of the lines that we created originally with the blue, going over those again, making those darker and a little bit thicker. And our final part will be where we go in with our colored pencil and crosshatch from left to right, and then we can finish up our owl. So what I mean by crosshatching is going into each section of our lines of the tree and making lines individually by picking up our pencil and making lines across rather than up and down. And I know we're getting towards the end here, so you can also finish up this part afterward and make parts darker than you need them. Like if it's not dark enough for you, you can go back with the black colored pencil. And what I might do is I'm probably going to film just a finishing video with adding the black in so you can see what it looks like even darker. But now we'll go into the owl and we're going to use our blue still. so that we get the first layer with blue of our owl. And so what we want to do first is actually go into the owl's eyes and make those blue. And we're going to go over them in black as well. But first, we're making everything blue. So coloring in the eyes, except for the white highlight, which is that little circle that we talked about creating at the top of the eyes. So you want to color in the eyes with the blue. And when you're finished doing that, you want to go around in a lighter blue circle around each of the eyes. So what I mean by that is kind of like you then make almost like another circle, lighter, using your pencil a little bit lighter. And just making it a little bit lighter around there. And then when you're done that, you can go back in on top of the blue with your black colored pencil and color in over the blue, but leaving a little bit of a blue line or a blue circular line around the eye. So it's going to kind of be like there is blue still around the eye. Like so. And then are we okay with like 3 more minutes for everybody? If you're not, you can pop off and get the recording, but I already have about 3 more minutes to finish up the shading. Awesome. And so we're going to go back in with our blue and start to lightly outline the outside of our owl, meaning the shape of the owl, and even around the bottom of where the feathers are at the bottom, but around the shape of the body, basically. And then we're also going to outline the nose. And lighter outline on the inside of the body where sort of the wings and all of that is, and in that sort of down below. And then we're going to lightly shade with our blue on the left side where the wings area would be, the head area, the top of the head, and then on the right side, of the body. And I think what I'll do, notice, I know it's getting kind of late. Maybe I will then send out the recording for probably 5 more minutes of this. Does that sound good for everybody? But I would love to see what you did.
That sounds good. I mean,
Okay.
if that works for you, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think this guy is really something else.
So
Uh,
if you
it's
want to show yours now, just to show what it looks like. Oh my God, Helen, that's gorgeous.